Good. We are live. Good evening, everyone. It's Paulo and I so far talking Whiz Comics #1.
That's
I
right.
just picked this up this week, the facsimile edition, not an actual Whiz Comics #1, which would be slightly bigger because it would be
Hmm.
Golden Age size.
Yeah. I guess they can't
And I was
reprint it
just
in the original
commenting.
size. They don't have the machines anymore set for the size.
No, they don't. I mean, you could probably find it on some. I don't even know because what it was is standard sizes have shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. Even
Hmm.
like even your standard comic book now is an eighth inch shorter than comic books in the 70s. Hence why you need different size comic book bags for them.
Hmm.
So it's like
No, but
the
it's
these.
just yeah.
I guess they save a little more money as things shrink. The
Well,
so
not necessarily. There's always because if you have too many leftover strips, you still have to pay for them, but you're just not using them.
Oh yeah, I'm not talking the comic book companies are saving any money. I'm talking the
Yeah.
printers are. Somehow the printers and the paper makers are
Yeah.
saving money by
Hmm.
using the smaller paper. Wilson is trying to make it on, but he seems to be just spinning out.
Hmm.
There he is. Good evening, Wilson.
Hello, good evening.
Did you know
We're
that the
talking
standard
over.
internet in the United States is much worse than what we have anywhere in Europe?
Yep, that's what I'm
I can
told.
believe that.
Because why
I,
upgrade when you're already making plenty of money?
exactly.
Good evening, Tit Goblin. Yeah, I was just commenting how nice the art was on Spy Smasher, who is C.C. Beck, as Paolo looked up, the artist of Captain Marvel. And I never really know. I've seen this cover before, but I never really noticed until seeing it full sized here that much like Action Comics #1, he's throwing a car. He's lifting a car. He's throwing. Superman was lifting a car. He's throwing a car. So it's like,
Very similar model, and that was
hmm.
that cover. I do recall was part of the lawsuit or whatever DC
Ah,
eventually went
Yeah.
after them for.
Mhm.
no,
Yeah,
DC
and
lost
that's
that lawsuit.
no. The lawsuit went on for 12 years,
Right.
and Fawcett threw in the towel because they were getting out of the comic book racket.
I thought Fawcett won, and then they threw in the towel anyway. I think is how it went. I think Fawcett actually won the lawsuit, but then they settled with DC anyway, um,
Promised never to use it
because they
again.
didn't want to publish Captain Marvel anymore. I'd have to look it up. I don't. I
Yeah,
vaguely remember that because
because
I distinctly remember people saying that Fawcett actually won the lawsuit, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. By that time, they'd spent too much money defending it. Captain Marvel wasn't as popular anymore, and to mitigate further lawsuits, they settled with DC.
Mhm.
I could be wrong, but that's just what that because I'm just going by memory. So
Oh yeah, we can check the details. I mean,
yeah,
sometimes we know a little bit and we start repeating it, and we don't get to the
yeah.
details, and then we
Sometimes
get
you
a
read the
detail wrong.
wrong. Yeah. So sometimes when you unlearn something, 5 years later you don't remember you unlearned it, and you remember the first
Mm.
thing. So it's like that's why it's like I'm going by memory. I'm not swearing to any of that. But that's the last thing I remember. Doesn't mean it's right.
Okay, so
I
let's
But
do
yeah,
see.
recall, and again, going by memories, is
mm,
there was a Superman issue where they teamed up together, and then later on, when it was reprinted, they removed Shazam and put in another character that basically was Shazam without being Shazam. And they put on his chest a giant sun, and they call him
what year was
something
that?
in the case of like Sun Man or something like that. I don't recall. It was one of the weirdest things that I remember reading an issue where they talked about Superman versus this other character, and then eventually it was Shazam again. It was really odd on how there was an issue, a reprint, and then a new issue released again. Going by memory.
I have a vague memory
No.
of this in the 70s, I guess, before DC bought Fawcett's stuff. Superman fighting a Shazam-like character, but I didn't think they ever officially teamed up before DC bought Fawcett's stuff. But I wasn't paying that much attention to.
Well, they used the lookalike Captain Thunder for
Captain
the
Thunder,
team up.
Is that whom thing?
Yeah, in the 70s.
Okay. So before
there's a Wikipedia article.
Before DC bought Fawcett stuff, they had Captain Thunder as a stand-in for Captain Marvel.
There wasn't one issue because they licensed when they launched the Shazam title in the 70s.
Right.
The Fawcett still retained copyright, so they had to license the character.
Oh, so they
only bought the Fawcett's sometime before Crisis.
Oh, okay. So that must be what Wilson's thinking of when they licensed it and had an official Superman Shazam in the 70s, and then they reprinted it sometime without the license and before they bought it outright. Ah, that makes sense then.
Yeah, that's where. So let's like issue 276.
Yeah.
276?
Yeah, Superman 276, cover date of June 1974.
Ah. But this is really nice printing on this Wiz Comics facsimile. I was just saying to Paolo before the show, they must have the film or the stats to this stuff because it looks really nice. It is all well. They've probably have they printed. I know they've reprinted the Captain Marvel stuff. I don't know if they've reprinted the entire issue before, but it all looks really nice. This is one of the better looking facsimile editions. As I was saying, that may be just because the last couple of facsimile editions I got were those Three Stooges ones, which were pretty especially that last one I got was pretty terrible. There was another Three Stooges facsimile edition that came out this week. I was just like, no thanks. I've had enough Three Stooges comics. Because I bought those first two Three Stooges facsimile editions just because I never saw a Three Stooges comic before. I was like, why not? I'm not the biggest Three Stooges fan ever, but out of curiosity, I got them. Oh, speaking of the Golden Age.
So I have the Wikipedia article here on the National Comics Publications versus Fawcett Publications.
Yep.
They did a Wikipedia article on it. Incredible. So Fawcett 1, still in the 40s. Okay.
Fawcett did win.
Okay, yeah. So the trial was in 1948. Fawcett won because the judge ruled that Superman, the character Superman, was in the public domain because the newspaper strips didn't have copyright info.
Oh.
Which
that's
is kind of, yeah.
Because Superman has not been in the public domain.
No. In any case, you can try to reprint those. You can try to reprint those specific comic strips that don't have the copyright notation, and see if DC doesn't try to sue you. But the judge ruled that the Superman was in the public domain because of those strips, but that Captain Marvel was an illegal copy. National then appealed the decision, probably because of the copyright notation thing.
Right, yeah. They had no choice.
Let's see here. National Superman copyright was held valid, but the McClure strip was not under copyright. Okay, Judge. How many judges are there here?
So the Superman
Judge Hand. Okay, so this is on appeal. Judge Hand did not find that the character of Captain Marvel was an infringement, but rather that specific stories or super feats could be infringements, and this would have to be determined in the retrial. And
Ah,
by that time, it was the early 50s, and there was the first comic book crash of 1950,
right.
and Fawcett decided, okay, we'll stop.
So Fawcett won, but on
Uh-huh.
appeal, because of an appeal, there was going to be a retrial, and Fawcett went in.
Fawcett won. National appealed. Fawcett won even more on the retrial, but the judges said that they could still lose, but that would have to be retried.
No, hold on. Fawcett won. Then it was
Okay,
appealed,
yeah,
and on appeal, Fawcett won even more. But then
yeah,
the judge said there could be a retrial.
yes.
Okay, so it was just the idea. It was just sort of the threat of a retrial that made Fawcett say, "All right, we're done here." And it's weird. The judge said that like super feats could be copyrighted. That's the craziest thing. Now, it's funny how like none of that applies anymore.
Yeah.
The idea that Superman throwing a car could be copyrighted
Mm-hmm.
or just doesn't apply anymore. I wonder what made it not apply.
I guess the other superheroes eventually showing.
You broke up. I couldn't hear a word you said.
Oh, I was saying that it's probably because you had so many other superheroes popping out of the woodwork
Yeah, but there was
and
plenty
other
of
publications
superheroes.
that were doing.
Yeah, there was plenty of superheroes in '48, but like I said, I'm not exactly sure
But
what it
there
was.
weren't. The majority of superheroes still had no powers,
Okay, maybe that's it.
and there weren't that many on Superman's power level. So
Uh,
because they mention here the Fox's Wonder Man
mm-hmm.
and Fawcett's Master Man, even
Uh-huh.
before Captain Marvel, because those were more direct ripoffs.
Yeah.
And but there was no trial because they just ceased publication.
Okay.
But you can still use it because what they would do, I sent you a cease and desist, and you desisted. So we have legal proof that you desisted,
Right.
and you can use that on the Captain Marvel trial. So, see, we have two cases on of a cease and desist letter sent by lawyers, and the publisher desisted. So once again, we given that counts as jurisprudence,
Right.
we ask that you apply the same legal interpretation again. But since Fawcett didn't desist this time, they went to trial.
Mm-hmm.
But the judge could use those two. But apart from that, it just didn't have the same. For example, Marvel did not have a Superman ripoff.
Yeah.
They had characters with capes. They had characters who were super strong. They had characters who can fly, but you don't have the same combination of costume
Right.
plus powers plus.
Like I said, I wonder when that all changed. I wonder because it's like every comic book company in the world has their version of Superman now, and it's
Right.
just okay. I wonder when that changed.
It gets to
I
a
have no
point.
idea.
It gets to a point where the certain characters make such a cultural impression.
Is it that it's just not new anymore? Could that be it? Superheroes are just not new anymore.
If it slips into the language, some things slip into the language, and then it's hard to not identify them, them as specific.
But it's not like DC doesn't still have a trademark copyright on Superman himself. It's just that they have no trademark copyright on Superman-like characters. That's what's so strange, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like from our point of view here in the future, just the idea that DC could sue Fawcett for Captain Marvel seems weird, especially with how many Captain Marvel, how many Superman type characters does Marvel have now? How many Superman
even Marvel
standing?
Yeah,
they got Apollo. No, who's it? Not they got Sentry. They got Who's the one
Hyperion.
from the Squadron? Hyperion. There's the one. There's two right there. And there's more. So it's kind of like, it's weird that, everybody and DC, Wildstorm, and before DC bought them, had tons of them. It's like everybody doing, like, some random comic book company doing their take on Superman is so common. It's a trope. So it's like to go from, in 1948, DC suing Fawcett over Captain Marvel to doing any random company doing their take on Superman, and it's a trope, is crazy. I mean, what was that movie with Will Smith? I didn't see it, but there's some
Hancock.
Will Smith movie,
Hancock.
which is a take on Superman, right? It's like, major big budget movies now have their take on Superman. It's like, it's such. I wonder when, like, it's because it becomes a cultural thing, I guess. But still, I wonder if there's any was there a legal point where that happened, or did it just kind of slowly over time?
I'm going to go with Super Duperman in Mad Magazine. Because from the moment that you have a parody show up, anyone coming afterwards can claim parody. And if you go to trial and you can explain why you're a parody, then the original copyright owner has to claim that you are not doing a parody.
But here's the thing. This I know because I was there. You cannot have a continuing comic book character parody. Like in the 90s, I remember where Marvel had to tell and it was in the 90s when the Punisher was huge. And there was a Punisher, some guy, whoever it was, black and white, put out a Punisher parody book, whatever it was, the comedy Punisher. I don't even remember what it was. And he had a successful, successful issue, and he was going to turn it into a series. And I know Don Daly talking about it said Marvel had to call him up and say, you're not allowed to have a series. That's Marvel would have to take legal. You're not allowed to have a parody character turn into a series of comic books, because then that's when you get into copyright infringement of the Punisher. You could do a parody book of the Punisher, but you can't have an ongoing parody book because then it's not a parody anymore.
That's very
least that guy. That
especially
guy
because we're talking about since we're talking about periodicals here, as long as the main character keeps having new stories out, I can claim to be parodying each and every story independently.
Yeah, but you don't want to go up against Marvel in court. That's the thing, too.
Probably, but yeah, and they've seen had the same problem with Wolveroach.
Yeah.
But I guess it depends. Ultimately, it's going to depend on.
That doesn't mean the judge is going to believe you.
Yeah, but then it gets down to whoever has money to spend,
right?
And how much money is involved.
Right.
Captain DC versus Fawcett makes sense because Captain Marvel was a bestseller. Right. If it hadn't been a bestseller, it would be forgotten, and we wouldn't be having this argument.
DC wouldn't have to sue them because they would have already gone out of business.
Mm-hmm. On the Squadron Supreme, there is a parody aspect, even if it's not funny. But they can claim that since their own Marvel characters are kicking the crap out of the DC characters, they're saying that. This is the parody element is that we are so much better than them.
Yeah, I don't know if any judge would believe that, though. I don't think they were trying. I think just by that time, it became common to have to do especially the DC characters who are the sort of the ones that were most in the cultures. Most embedded in culture and sort of the simplest characters. What's that word I'm looking for? uh, that Superman was just kind of a strong man from another planet. Batman was just they're archetypes. There's the word. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman were more archetypes than Spider-Man, Mr. Fantastic. Captain America was more of an archetype. But let's see, what is Tit Goblin saying? Asking Wilson here. Wilson, with your time in the art archive at Marvel, did you ever come across original art that was severely degraded or non-archival ink and mediums made the art unusable for marketing? The only thing I can think of like that is Gil Kane in the late 70s, early 80s was inking with a sign pen. And this is a sign pen I refill with India ink. Because almost all comics were done with India ink. But once like markers like this were introduced, like if you see Gil Kane, like in the 90s, Gil Kane work from the early 80s was turning brown. Because these sign pens were not archival. And would fade away to nothing eventually. And you can still see that some of that in the 80s when if you look at some original art that used markers, especially for like the straight lines, you can see it browned out. So it's like the black India ink is still black, but the place where markers were used gets brown.
That was kind of like where I was going to go to, that there were some covers that Gil Kane did that started changing color. Not all the artists used archivals. It really, sometimes it was whatever the artist was using. I know one issue of Iron Man came in, it was all done in Sharpie. Just because, the guy was leaving the book. So it was basically, it had to be rushed. And it looked pretty good for a rushed book.
But almost all India ink is archival, so it's always the markers that are non-archival.
Right.
And so before the 90s, all markers were non-archival.
Mm-hmm. And many artists had used that type of ink. Have used the India ink, sorry. But you could tell when someone was using a pen, because it did not take long for it to start to fade on a cover. But by the time I got to see the artwork and got the artwork, it already went through so many stages for it to be archived into the system. So you had the older books, had film. Once we got computerized, everything was made copies and stuff like that. So the only thing that I saw with artwork itself was the damage that was done to the artwork after years of using stuff like the glue to put the balloons on there. So what I was looking for was for a piece of artwork to show what degraded a bit. Here's a page from Eternal #1. This was drawn by Mark Texiera, inked by probably not Jimmy, but Peter Palmiotti, most likely. And you can see how the balloons are starting to come up here because they're pasted on. And if you look at the page itself, there's a lot of paste up going on here. So I could only imagine that there's a lot of whiteout on it, a lot of cuts to it, and so much of the glue that is fading and changing colors and stuff like that. And again, this happens after years. The glue starts to fade away. There's some red marks on here, which was done with a pen. So that would have been a color hold on there. That will probably eventually fade away as well, because I've seen that on many pieces of artwork where a red color will start to fade because the artist was just using whatever might have been available to them at the time. And then I have another page in here that a lot of the word balloons has fallen off. And I used to keep a baggie, actually a little envelope full of nothing but text that fallen off the page, and we could not figure out where that text would have gone to. And that was something left there. Yeah, I guess this is the only page that I have that I have where the balloons are falling apart or starting to come off.
Let me get you so low so we can see that.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so you can see where it's coming apart here. It's falling apart. And then you can see where there's changes of colors on the paper. This has all whiteout on it.
Oh, Tex used to work with ink and whiteout like it was paint.
Yes.
He would throw whiteout down, throw ink on top of it, throw more whiteout down, throw ink on top of it. It was fascinating watching him work. Watching him work helped me with my work too, just because he was so unprecious about it. He was just like he'd be working with his left hand, his right hand.
Yeah, this is a stat over the artwork.
Let's see. A
Funny
stat
thing.
a stat is like a photocopy, only it's on photo paper, so it's much more durable. It's not cotton.
I had never noticed this, and I guess I think once I told you about how I first noticed how inkers changed the artwork.
Right.
And I'm used to seeing the text
Balloon.
on Ghost Rider, where he inked himself. And
Right.
who inked that Eternal Story?
I think he may have inked that himself, but it was before he was really heavy inking.
Okay.
This particular one, this was
Yeah.
by Palmiotti.
Oh, that's Peter Palmiotti, so he wasn't.
I'm going to assume it's Peter.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, because he's doing some lightening there, but it's like there's a mishmash of styles. There's some Leighton, there's some Tom Palmer, but what I noticed, I had never noticed this before. Tex draws faces like Carmine Infantino does.
Here's
Yeah.
the Ghost Rider page. That's also text.
Let's see. Hold on. Let me get that bigger again. Oh,
This
yeah.
one is looks like it's regular pencils and inks. It doesn't look like he did too many changes to it.
Is this his Ghost Rider or Javier Saltares?
This might be Soteris pencils and his inks.
Right.
So this is issue 93. So this is way into the series.
Yeah, that's the last one. They brought Saltares back for the last issue.
Okay. So this
they had that guy called Pop Man drawing before, and Wizard complained that the Pop Man made Ghost Rider look like an overweight clown.
Yeah, I was gonna drag it. I couldn't find it, but I was gonna show my Walt Simonson sketch from like 1982, which he did in Sharpie, but it looks as sharp as it did back in 1982 because it's stuck in with my art over there. It's not sunshine hasn't gotten it a lot. If something's out in the sunlight, it will deteriorate. The marker will turn to brown and fade faster. And then there's something like this, which is my this is just something Jack Abel doodled and gave to me one day at work. But you can see it's turning brown and crumbling. This is just some random note paper that he had near his desk at Marvel. So this is probably from like 1990. And the note paper wasn't brown and crumbling in 1990, but 30 something years later it is. So it's like it's amazing to me how this one has aged, because this is it's pencil, so that looks fine, but this is probably the most aged looking piece of art I have. The golden age stuff I have looks new. This does not. So it's amazing. Sometimes it's just the paper aging that. This is going to crumble to dust someday because of how much, I assume, acid is in the paper.
And then at the same time, here's an older piece of art from 1977 a Kurt Swan Superman where everything is on the page, penciled
Right.
and inked and lettered right on the page. And the
So
only
there's no
thing
balloons.
the only thing that's old about the page really is the tape on it. It's the
Yeah.
remnants of the tape here and then the tape on the top. But the
Was
rest
that
of the
one-
page is perfectly
Yeah.
fine.
It's the glue any glue that goes on a page. Like when we had to paste those balloons down, we had
Right.
to use rubber cement. So that rubber cement turns the page brown eventually, just like the tape does on that page.
And even his signature looks like it was done with a regular pen, with art pen, because it hasn't changed color at all. So it's really, the tools that they're using,
And
on there.
And since
So-
Marvel and DC both, gave them all Bristol board to work on, that stuff is archival.
Exactly. Yeah. So there has been artwork where I've seen it start to go bad once we got it. Only in the sense of whatever pens might have been used. But by the time we get it, scan it in, and we have copies of them. Here's a cover that was not used for publication. I don't know if the book got canceled beforehand, but it went as far as the paste up for it, and I can't seem to get it out of the box. But here's a Paul Ryan Doom 2099, and it's got as far as like the acetate for the whatever. I guess they will go do a second color on that.
Well, that's weird. The Doom logo is pasted right on the board, but the overlay isn't. I guess you're right.
So I'm guessing
Because
it's a fifth color maybe.
Yeah. Well, there was one time, because throughout comic history, you pasted the logos right down onto the boards. But sometime in the 90s, we were like, well, why don't we just do them on acetate overlays? And the printer eventually, well, the reason they wouldn't was I think the printer charged extra for the overlay. But eventually, sometime in the 90s, just before we computerized, we started doing all the logos and such things on acetate overlays.
But the acetate is better for licensing because it's easier for
Yeah.
the licensor to change the art according to needed for the market.
Which is but it costs more for the printer, I think, is what it was. And it's better for the artwork not to have rubber cement on it. That's kind of why we in the bullpen wanted to do it, too. We didn't necessarily like putting rubber cement on artwork.
Mm-hmm.
Because we knew it was going to turn these nice covers brown eventually.
Well, by the late 90s, that wasn't the problem. By the late 90s, you could actually have when everybody started using Photoshop everywhere.
90 by 95, Marvel's covers were all computerized. So
right. So yeah, it makes it that by that stage it would make it easier for the licensors to have access to the original art.
Right.
Because you know that the reason the art was produced as if it could be reproduced in black and white up to then is because they never knew if the licensors published in color or in black and white. And that would depend on the market. Sometimes they wouldn't care about coloring a comic book because it's just a comic book.
And speaking of the Golden Age, we've got the latest Cerebus in Hell first issue, Cancel America, with a Captain America parody cover. But I have to say, this is one of the ones where I don't know what the heck is going through Dave Sim's mind, but
probably dementia.
First of all, it was all, he's been doing it was all the same. Every strip was the same cover with different jokes on it. But what killed me every time is he had Yeah, and I know it was Cerberus in hell, but he had Hitler being the voice of reason. And I'm just like, really? 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 The voice of reason stuff is coming out of Hitler's mouth? It just baffled me. I'm like, Dave Sim, are you that unaware that you made Hitler the voice? Because I was just baffling. About halfway through, I stopped reading this one. I couldn't take it anymore. There are some issues that are like
that. Do you think Dave Sim reads current Captain America?
No, Dave Sim does not read Captain America.
Okay, because he might have been commenting on something that happened because they put Jordan Peterson's words in the Red Skull a couple of years ago.
Oh no, this is all sort of parodying America and its foreign policy and whatever, like and cancel culture. I get whatever the heck that is, but it's like, here's one, Captain, and he's Captain Antifa too. I am sure Dave Sim doesn't know what Antifa is. Captain Antifa in Our Green Future Today. And as he's getting punched, Hitler is saying, but electric vehicles only make up 2% of, and he's getting, and Captain Antifa is saying, fine, anyone driving a fossil fuel vehicle, $10K a day, then give money to the people driving electric vehicles. Green Paradise will be here next week. It's like not even funny. I know it's supposed to be parody, but it's like not even funny. Maybe then he's got guys talking in stereotypical German accent. Maybe that's it. Maybe I need to get der Missus to call me Gretchen, and then I would shoot straighter and harder and longer. That at least is a little funny. See, this is part of the problem. The green challenged aren't even following the conversation. He's got a couple of those were funny under there. But it's like the main stuff is just like every joke you've ever heard about cancel culture or whatever. In Captain Antifa, in Batteries of Trust, but I can't afford an $18,000 for a replacement car. That's Hitler being the voice of reason once again. It's like, you made Hitler the voice of reason, really?
Hitler was the founder of Volkswagen.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know what to tell me either. This one was just like, sometimes I wonder why I buy it.
Jared, I think I found yeah.
What was that?
I think I found the reason why it's okay to do versions of Superman.
Why is that?
Okay, so in 1983, Warner sued ABC over The Greatest American Hero.
Uh-huh.
And the judge decided that the similarity to be assessed must concern the expression of ideas, not the ideas themselves. So the previous judge in 1951 said that they could copyright the feats, but this judge in 1983 said precisely the opposite.
Right. You could copyright lifting a car. And this one said, no, you can't.
No, right.
You can.
You need Superman looks and acts like a brave, proud hero who has dedicated his life to combating the forces of evil. Hinckley looks and acts like a timid, reluctant hero who accepts his mission grudgingly and prefers to get on with his normal life. And so on and so on, making other types of comparisons. So the more nuance you give to the character, the less they look alike, even if they look alike on the surface. And the judge here took the time to to go through those differences, which I suppose a judge in
Okay.
1951 wouldn't care about because it's just comics.
Right.
Also, by
I
the
can
1980s, you had lawyers and judges specialized in in the entertainment industry, so they're
Yeah,
more likely to go through all of this.
that's interesting. Yeah. So 1983, you found a case, huh?
Mhm.
So that must have been when things changed. Because if that was TV and movies, so that was the big time. I guess
Yeah.
that's why the judge paid attention.
Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Because I was wondering, we were talking about that. What changed? That one judge took the time to say these two things really aren't alike.
Right.
They're nothing
Because
alike.
they aren't. With Captain Marvel, just the origin story makes it quite clear that they're not the same characters.
Yeah.
So even if you have a bunch of surface elements that kind of look alike,
Yeah.
the
They're
primary
not
motivator for each character isn't the same.
right. The idea that someone's going to mix them up is not going to happen. Good evening, Common
That
Crab.
reminds,
Hey, Terrence.
We're
reminds me
talking
when I
about
think
law
of people-
tonight.
if I remember correctly, I think the people created Casper. I think that was Harvey. Tried to sue for the Ghostbuster logo, saying
Oh,
that it
that's right.
infringed on their ghost look. And what I understand, the judge basically said there's only so many ways you could draw a ghost. And because the ghost from Ghostbusters does look like one of the trios. Casper had three other cousins or uncles.
Oh, yeah, that's
there
right.
There was three other mean ghosts, and one of them had a resemblance to the Ghostbusters ghost.
But meanwhile, did Disney actually win a suit against Marvel and Howard the Duck, or was that all out of court in the 70s when
I
Howard the
think
Duck
that-
had to wear pants?
If I remember correctly, they basically won enough to just say that Howard needs to always wear pants.
Yeah,
I remember reading that. I do not recall if they actually won the case.
yeah. I don't know if there was an out of court settlement, because I know by the early 2000s, when they made the Howard the Duck Essential Edition. The reason they made that, and that was just before Disney bought Marvel, of course. I remember Corey Settlemeyer, the editor on the book, telling me the reason they were doing a Howard the Duck Essential Edition is, I guess they're only allowed to reprint it once. And so they picked the format where they could reprint the most stuff, which was the Essential, the black and white one. So that's why Howard the Duck got an Essential Edition back in, I don't know, 2003, 2004, somewhere around there.
Okay, so I think I have.
Paolo's looking up more cases.
Yeah, it's on comic book resources on the Comic Urban's Legends page. Okay, Walt Disney forced Marvel to change Howard the Duck's appearance. Disney
Only someone waging growth.
threatened to sue Marvel over the appearance of Howard the Duck.
Okay, so it was just a threat was enough. Okay, that's
Yeah.
what I thought, but I wasn't 100% sure.
And that's when they said, okay, if he wears pants is okay, and Marvel said yes.
Yeah. So they put him in pants, trapped in a world he never made. Pants.
There were a couple of when Marvel did Funny Animals in the 40s and 50s, they had a couple of duck characters who did kind of resemble Donald as well, although they did wear pants. The problem here is the way you draw a duck's bill in a cart as a cartoon character, which is kind of
Yeah.
always the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I wonder when that settled into like because if you were to draw a duck character now, it would look like Donald Duck. It's kind of, even if it's not. It's like that's how everyone drew ducks after a certain point. I wonder if there's like a larger variety of ducks before, like Daffy Duck used to look differently, of course, at the beginning. But now Daffy Duck, even though he's black with an orange bill, looks different than Donald, but still looks. There's a lot of similarities, like you said, in the way you draw the bill.
Yeah.
I wonder if anyone ever figured out another way to draw the bill, and I don't know. That'd be a
Here's
whole
the funny
research
thing:
project. in its own.
in a cartoon duck, the duck's bill doesn't look like a regular duck's bill.
No. That's why. Like I think early Daffy Duck drawings would look more like a duck's bill.
Yeah.
And I think early Donald Duck's drawings it looked more like a duck's bill, but that changed over time, due to cartooning. I wonder if there's anyone who ever found another way but that Donald Duck way of drawing duck bill.
Wasn't there a duck in Jason Alexander did a voice for a
Oh, that's right.
Duck Man?
I can't remember the name of it, but you're right. There was a duck in that. I can't remember how it was drawn though.
It was very Nickelodeon, kind of a long bill and then a snout. I think.
Yeah,
Again, going by memory.
Duckman, it's more simplified, if that's even possible.
Yeah. Let's see, what other comics did I get this week? I wanted to show you the number one I got. That was good. Where did it go? There we go. Local Man. Tim Seeley writing it. I think he drew the back. I don't remember Tim Seeley being an artist. Tim Seeley and Tony Flex, or Fleeks, Fleecs. With Brad Simpson on the colors. Third gen art by Tim Seeley. But it's got some nice art. Let me go solo so I can. It's got 2 stories in it. This is the main story. Takes place in the Midwest somewhere. Nice brown color. And then the flip side is a little short story that's kind of about the same character when he was on a superhero team, and it's very 90s image stuff. So they got this sort of short 90s image story flashback of there's all the villains. And this is the Tim Seeley art. But this one's going on my pull list. I really liked the first issue, though I was a little annoyed at it. It's the story of this guy, what's his name? Crossjack, who was part of this superhero team called Generation 3. Is that their name? Third Gen. A superhero team, and he did something to disgrace himself. That was the annoying part. They didn't tell us what he did to disgrace himself. So I was kind of like, because really, in this post-Trump age, it's hard to come up with something where you can disgrace yourself and not, So that was the hardest part of the story to buy, was that he disgraced himself. It's funny that. So he disgraced himself, and it's about him going back to his hometown to live with his parents, who aren't too happy about it. He was the hometown hero. Now he's the hometown disgrace. And he even and part of the story was when he was like a teenager, there was a hometown villain even for him. And when he moved up to third gen, like the hometown villain was recruited by this supervillain group, so he went there too. So and he must be in his like late 20s or 30 years old now. and the hometown villain is like 20 years older than him. So he shows up. The hometown villain shows up. He's like 50 years old, and he wants to fight Crossjack or something again. And then they're in a bar, and Crossjack gets kicked out of the bar. And what's his name? Hodag is the villain's name. Hodag. He's some sort of, I don't know what he's supposed to be, monster. And what's funny too is Crossjack picks up a garbage can lid to use as a shield. And since he's disgraced, I guess he's not allowed to do that, because near the end of the comic, his old team, third gen, shows up and says, "You're not allowed to do it." They show up and go, "You're not allowed to fight. You're not allowed to use anything as a shield. You're not, because we own the copyright on Crossjack. You're not allowed to do any of this stuff." And he's just like, "Come on, guys, I'm just trying to get by. I wasn't fighting." So it was an interesting first issue of this disgraced superhero moving back home. And I really liked the 6-page image flashback story in the back too. That helped catch the flavor of the whole thing. But very enjoyable first issue. It's going to be on my pull list, and we'll see how it develops. But Tim Seeley, what did I read by Tim Seeley? Revival? I think that was his back in the day. Horror Noir. Do you guys remember that book? It was an image book. It ran maybe 50 issues from like 2012 to, I don't know, 2018 or so, about this small town where like aliens landed, and it was a horror book. Pretty cool. But I was surprised at how much I liked it. This is probably the most likable first issue I've picked up in a while. So I'm looking forward to reading more of it. Likable first issue.
That sounds pretty cool.
There's a description. Oh, and here's something that I just found. As I've been cleaning out things and organizing 30 years worth of drawings into portfolios and stuff, I found this, which is Amazing Spider-Man webbing from the logo.
Nice.
I was doing a logo reconstruction, I believe, which was done in Adobe Illustrator, of course. That's where, if you're going to make a logo, that's where you make it. But I think I was doing a reconstruction of the webbing, and I found it easier to, print out a blue line of it and draw the webbing by hand than to try to build it in digitally. So that's what this is. Just the original Amazing Spider-Man webbing that I reconstructed to put behind the logo.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah. Whoever did I don't know if Steve Ditko did the original webbing and logo or somebody else did. But they did a nice job. I want to
say it probably would have been Sam Rosen.
Who was
Let's take a look. Here's issue 20 of Amazing Spider-Man.
But I don't know who was doing their logos. That may have been done in-house.
I thought the logos were being done by the letterers as well.
No, not necessarily.
Unfortunately, I never found out. Sam Rosen did the lettering on this. I could only assume so. And again, only because of the inside, the way they did the artwork in here and the logos and stuff like that. I could imagine that they were doing the covers, and they might have just done the cover at one point and just kept using it over and over again. I know Steve Ditko was the one who created the corner box art.
Right. I was just reading something about that. Yeah. Ditko came up with the idea for branding and doing the corner box. But all DC's logos were done in-house generally early, like in the 40s and 50s. But Marvel's who was there? Saul Brodsky was Marvel's production guy. But I don't think
that Saul Brodsky could come up with logos like that.
I think he did do some logos, but I don't even know if he was there in like '61 when the Spider-Man logo was made. I think he may have come a couple of years into the Marvel. I can't remember, but like I said, I've never heard who came up with the Spider-Man logo. Never read that anywhere. It could have been Ditko. It could not have been Ditko. I don't know. But whoever did a nice job on placing that webbing, I have to say.
Yeah.
And was the webbing in the original? I haven't looked if the webbing was in, because this is, what issue was I doing here? Oh, I don't have the number. Oh, this is the Medusa cover. So I was doing the webbing from the Medusa cover. That was way on in 57 or something. So yeah, I don't know who came up with the original Marvel logos. I've never read much about them. That's weird.
Although Eric Stanton said that he gave Ditko the idea to add webbing to the arms.
Ah, okay. Okay, I can understand that. A little bondage-like. Armpit webbing. But yeah, I never really appreciated the webbing behind the logo until I had to recreate it. Because who pays attention to it until you have to work with it? But it was hard. It's funny how some things are easier to do easier for me to do on paper and then scan them in than to do on the computer as a digital drawing to begin with. Was there something about making those quick gestures on paper that I find a lot more free than trying to do them on a glass screen? How about you, Wilson? Are there things you draw and scan in rather than make digitally? Like simple things like logos, not drawing in general. You're muted.
Sorry about that. There have been many times where I find that it's just easier to draw it on paper than it is to do it on the computer, and then scan it in and then work from there. I've done that plenty of times. Like I've never been able to like draw a whole comic book page directly on the computer. I attempted it a few times and found that I have a better control over the pen and ink than doing it directly on a Wacom tablet or anything like that.
Oh, and it was interesting.
No, I was thinking at covers. I was looking at covers, and like the first Spider-Man cover, the webbing's a different way altogether. It's actually coming from the top of the page and webbing out, and so the logo is kind of following that pattern. And then eventually, it looks like they kept that pattern, and then they added a new one. I'm just trying to figure out what issue that they start adding
this
the new
webbing.
One, because
I've never looked at it that close.
Yeah, I never looked closely enough to it. It was like, so the first issue, the webbing is completely different.
This webbing is from the John Romita era. This is the cover he's got with Medusa on it, tying up Spider-Man with her hair. So that's what this webbing is from. So it's late on into Spider-Man. It's 5 years into Spider-Man. So I don't know when this exact webbing came in. Yeah, but there's something that
it came in as early as issue 2.
Issue 2, that webbing? Wow. Okay. So it was
yeah.
So Ditko may have had something to do. We have to look up the origin of Spider-Man's logo. Because I've never heard anything about the logo, or I've never heard any. I've heard stuff about DC's logos because often you hear, like Todd Klein is always posting logos he found and who made them and who he's Todd Klein's blog and Facebook page have a lot on origin of logos, and sometimes you hear like who was it, Jack Adler. Made some logos at DC. He was one of their production guys, and who Who was his boss? Another Saul. Saul Brodsky was the Marvel guy, right? And Saul Harrison was the DC guy, who was Jack Adler's boss, I think. And Jack Adler colored a lot of the DC covers. And I think he made logos and things for DC. So like that stuff I know was done in house and it's been mentioned. But like the early Marvel logos, I never hear mentioned who made them.
No. And an
That's
issue
weird. I
two,
never thought of that.
an issue
There's
two
a
is the
5-part.
first-
There's a 5-part article on Todd Klein's website.
About who made the Marvel logos?
Yeah, about who made this one is only about Spider-Man, but
Who
there's
made
a
Spider-Man?
according to Mark Evanier, the original Marvel logos like this one were designed by production manager Saul Brodsky and letterer Artie Simek.
So Brodsky did have something to do with them and Simic. Okay.
It's him.
Mark got this information from Saul and corroborated it with Stan Lee. With what
So
Stan
they
Lee
were
can remember on the
in-house.
subject. Yeah.
They were in-house. Okay. Much like DC, the logos were done in-house.
That's it. It's interesting because I could see some of the logos being made in the house. The way that cover lettering is designed, but Spider-Man is a bit too complex.
There's a
So it's
Darren
probably one of
says
Saul Brodsky's.
get a comment from Darren. There's a book about Marvel design. It's called Marvel by Design, published in. I think I. Is that the one I saw that was no? It was a Marvel. I think I saw it wasn't Marvel by Design. There was one before it that was about Marvel covers, and it was a terrible book.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
This
I don't
is on
think
my
I've seen Marvel by Design.
It's on my Amazon wish list. It has stuff about what you guys were talking about, of course, but then the actual logo, like Marvel block logo as it is now versus the evolution over the years, and then the anatomy of a comic book cover. I'm just looking at some shots from the actual book, but it goes through. It's probably everything from logos to costumes to cover, trade dress to layout and all that stuff. But it's definitely
I took that Marvel covers one out of the library and remember being very disappointed by it. Not an artist, but my attempts to draw on my iPad have been too detached and slippery. Yeah. Build AI TO to give things credit. Okay.
Will do. Thank you for the advisement. Yeah.
Well, in the early 90s, when you guys were at Marvel, the era of them burning money, buying corporate card company and whatnot, were they ever thinking about buying a printer, or was that beyond their coffers at the time? I don't think they thought there was money in printing.
The size of the printers would have been, they would have had to print other people's books as well to make that cost effective, from what I understand.
Yeah.
That you can't buy a printer, because those printers are huge. They're like newspaper printers. If you ever watch old movies and stuff like that, I think the comic book printers at that time were huge. I always wondered, why didn't they just buy a newspaper company and use their printers and just moved everything into one big office? But then there's also distribution that they would have to deal with as well, I would guess.
Here's an interesting thing that I never thought about until I read about it last year sometime. Charlton Comics owned their own presses, which is why they got into the comic business, because they wanted the presses running 24/7. So they printed the comic books at night to keep those printers going. But here's something I always thought, that was an advantage for Charlton, owning the printers, so they could, get their comics printed cheaper. Here is what I never thought about until I read it. By the end of Charlton, by the 70s, it was a disadvantage because printing technology had moved on. Charlton printers were from the 50s, right? That's when they started. So by the 70s, printing technology had moved on. And Charlton couldn't afford to upgrade their printers. But meanwhile, because printing technology had moved on, other places could print cheaper than Charlton on their old presses could.
And wasn't there a paper shortage Was it in the 70s? Wasn't there a paper shortage that might have led to like that DC implosion, or was that? I thought they're intertied somehow.
I wish I could. Here's what and I only read this once. I wish I had kept the article and where it came from, because I can't find anything on it anymore. But I read once that the reason that comic books were so cheap up until 1970 or whatever was because the U.S. made so much newsprint during World War II that they had a surplus that lasted 20 years. Stored up in Canada in cold storage, they had just tons and tons and tons of newsprint that they made during World War II for whatever reason that they had to make so much. And that's what comics were printed on. And that all ran out in the late 60s or so. And that's when paper prices went up. And I think, runaway inflation probably made prices go up in the 70s too. But I've never been able to. I only read that once in whatever source this was, and I didn't save it or write. And I read it in like 1993 or something. And I've yet to be able to find anyone else mention that. I've tried looking it up and can't find anything on it. So I don't know how true it really is, since I only read it that one time. But it sounds feasible.
But the comics, though, I mean, you guys are the experts in this, but like also the cover price had always been 10 cents, and then they would just shave down the page count until eventually they then had to increase the cover price.
The page count got smaller and smaller. Matter of fact, we were discussing at the beginning of the show how the size of the paper shrunk too, even from like the 70s and 80s until now. The size of
the trim size.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you just get those fractions of the paper.
Right, just fractions, which is why you need modern age bags, silver age bags, golden age bags, and bronze age bags.
I think that's common also in, I used to work in candy, right? So like, the confectionery, like they'll like slightly shave down the size of a candy bar. Then they'll, all of a sudden they'll increase the price, but they'll package it with like, now bigger size, but it's actually back to the original size it had been.
Can't get a half-gallon ice cream anymore.
Oh, I wish I could.
Also, once they started adding the nutrition value onto the packages, was another reason why the size changed.
Yeah, so that's a very good point.
That number. So they had to make it smaller so the serving size can reach a particular number. So that was another reason why the packaging changed.
And good evening, 62 Lefty Blues.
Welcome.
Oh, and another comment I just read. I think I just read that this one's going to be an ongoing now. Damn them all. Simon Spurrier, Charlie Adler, and Sophie Dogson. And Charlie Adler is just kicking ass on this book. He is just doing such a good job. The color is really serving him. The drawing, the storytelling, it's all terrific. I'm really enjoying
I love the cover design.
But yeah, because of his art. I was never a fan of the big logo. This is like the indie comic cover design. Big logo in the middle. At least they put the guy and the dog in front of it. Often they put the logo in the middle on front of everything. And I've never been a fan of that logo. Like every week when I do my video, I show my top of the printer museum covers that I just have two covers sitting on the top of my, just to see comics that are in my collection. I put them in an Atari Force and a Mr. X I have this week. And I just put them there so I can look at them all week. There's certain series I've bought in the last 10 years, like East of West comes to mind, Manhattan Projects, Stray Bullets, that all have that like giant logo in the middle. And it's like none of the covers are good. Not one cover is memorable. Not one cover is worth putting out and looking at all week because they all have like a little image on top or bottom and a big logo in the middle. And it's like the cover has become an afterthought on a lot of indie books, especially. So to me, it's like,
Is that
that's why I
Mr.
don't
X?
like it.
Is that Dean Motter? Is that
That's
Mr.
a Dean
X? Is that
Motter
Dean?
Mr. X, yeah.
He wasn't he an art director or a packaging designer for DC for a stretch?
I don't know.
I really like his art and design sense, and
He may have. I know he was a commercial artist. And I thought it was up in Canada though, but maybe it was in New York. Maybe he's just Canadian. I can't remember.
Remember when did DC in late '80s did The Prisoner?
Right.
Yeah, and that was him. But he also, I think he was like a packaging designer, art director.
I don't know if he was the packaging designer, art director type, but I don't know if he was for DC.
I really liked his stuff though. I really like his graphic.
Yeah, he does some the Mr. X stuff he did, and the Hernandez brothers Mr. X stuff from the first 4 issues is terrific too.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I ever saw one of my favorite cartoonists, Seth, the one named cartoonist, his stuff was first on Mr. X. He replaced who was drawing it after Dean Motter, and I forget. But it was like I didn't even like that Seth's Mr. X stuff. Now I can go back, but it's like he went on to become one of my favorites. But when I first saw his Mr. X stuff, I was like, and it was kind of But this, like I said, the art, Charlie Adler is just killing it in this book. So I'm enjoying it thoroughly, and it's kind of there was a nice plot twist at the end of this one that was funny. It's kind of if John Constantine had a niece who was into magic, and the story started with John Constantine dying, and kind of the world of magic. What the conceit is, magic was always hard. It was hard to do magic. There was always a price for it. The story of this series is all of a sudden, for reasons unknown, magic is really easy to do. So there's all sorts of criminals and whoever can get their hands on some magic can now do it. And so how that's kind of affecting everything around dead John Constantine's niece here. She's kind of the lead character in the story, and it's just really, like I said, I'm really liking Charlie Adler's artwork in this. I always liked his stuff. I always said he was, an unsung hero of comics for all the work he did on The Walking Dead, which was good, solid work. But this is a cut above his Walking Dead work. Maybe it's the color, maybe it's his giving himself more storytelling challenges, but it's just really, really good stuff here. And I think Boom just announced a couple of its series were going to be ongoings now. And I think this is one of the ongoing ones. So I'm happy to hear that. Damn them all. And it's funny that with all the nice color in the comic, the cover is practically black and white. Like what?
Well, actually, I appreciate the restraint, but I just had to Google. I think it was called Dead Body Road. The writer was Justin. And the reason I mentioned this is if you don't like that kind of cover design, that one will really disagree with you because that's like I
actually bought volume 1 of that and it was terrific. But volume 2, I think, had a different artist and I somehow never checked it out. Well, volume 1 of Dead Body Road was terrific.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know what I think it is? I think it's because I'm just thinking of this right now. I'm thinking out loud. Because like a lot of these small indie places, especially like Image Comics stuff, there's no art. They're not working with any art directors. There's nobody whose job it is to make sure all of the covers are really good. So I think covers on indie books especially become afterthoughts. It's kind of like because if you're an indie artist, you're not making a ton of money. We all know how much work it is to draw a comic book. So that's what you're thinking about. And when it comes to the cover, it's just a lot easier to put a couple of images on it in a big logo. I think that may have something to do with it too. Because it's just there's only, there's usually only one guy working on the art, and he's got to think about the covers too. And I don't know if they have the experience of thinking about the covers. So that it could just be that, since there's such a small, not even mom and pop place, either a mom or a pop place, that there's nobody thinking about the covers deeply because they don't have the time.
Which I think is a definite.
Aquaman 37 cover should have a permanent place above your printer top museum for covers if you ever get that comic. I need the French version too.
What's Aquaman 37? Forgive my ignorance. Should I Google it?
That's the one with that got replaced with a dolphin in France, with him holding Mera in his arms. Remember?
Got it. Okay.
And speaking of artwork, another terrifically drawn comic was Saga number 62. Same artist, Fiona Staples. But as I was flipping through this issue, I was just like, wow, I like, it still looks like Fiona Staples. And I don't know what's different. But I liked, because I haven't really studied her art that closely, but I liked the art in this issue a lot better than in previous issues. I just thought it was terrific, and I just thought the color was good. I thought the drawing, and it's not like didn't like. It's not like I didn't like her art before, but this issue particularly stood out to me. And then
is the coloring flatter? Is the coloring not as modeled? Maybe
I'm gonna have to go back, but it even says when I got to the end, it said when she sent over her layouts for this issue, Fiona Staples wrote, "Here are the first half of the thumbnails and possibly the first inset panel of the series. Better advertise, so it will be shaking things up. Brian here retroactively advertising this major evolution in our storytelling style. Fiona and I will both be curious to hear your hot takes about said controversial door chime insight." I don't even know what that is. I fear this channel's horrific final scene. So she's even saying she's trying a new style here. But I don't know. I guess I haven't been paying attention to the first 61 issues enough to tell you what the change in style is. But I definitely noticed it. And I definitely said to myself as I was reading it, wow, I really like this issue. So I'm going to have to go. I don't know what the change in style was. But it's different. I noticed it. Matter of fact, I think when I was doing my weekly video haul this week, as I was flipping through it, I was like, wow, I'm really impressed by her artwork here. I'm going to have to try to figure out why.
And she inks her own stuff?
Yeah, she does. I think she does everything digitally too. So she inks, colors. She all the art is by her. But I don't know what she's doing differently.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look. Mm-hmm. But it was noticeable.
It was noticeable enough. It wasn't jarringly different. It was noticeable enough. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was weird that I got to the end and they went, "Oh, let us know what you think about this new style." And I'm like, well, I liked it, but I don't know what the new style is. Because it's not that radically different. I guess it's the layout she's doing differently.
I mean, she's very popular. I mean, that book's very popular. So it's just she's trying to, kind of broaden her artistic chops, or just
Yeah, definitely.
To me,
I'm going
to
pull some old issues out and compare and contrast because I don't know what she changed, but I like the change. It's weird. Maybe it has something to do with the way maybe she was working from full script and now it's plot. I don't know. It didn't really say what the new style was, but I enjoyed it thoroughly. It made Saga go up a notch in my book. It made Fiona Staples go up a notch in my book because for the first 61 issues, to me were B plus. This was an A. What the difference is, I can't tell you. You guys ever read Saga?
I have not.
I fortunately picked up the first issue when it was new, so at least I have it as part of my collection because I know it's quite pricey now. But I have not. I will confess I have not read it actually.
Paulo?
I was bored into the first 5 pages of issue number 1, and I eventually got rid of the trade paperback.
Okay.
I mean, I know this was him coming off of Why the Last Man, though I think we talked about this. Might have been a large gap between that and or
no, he did. What was that one I bought that Tony Harris drew? Ex Machina.
Oh, Ex Machina. Yeah.
So he was doing some stuff. I didn't like Why the Last Man. I think it had a lot to do with the fact I tried reading it a couple times. I think it had a lot to do. I just couldn't get into Pia Guerrera's artwork. Wasn't for me. To me, Brian K. Vaughan is very artist dependent, as are most writers. Well, not all writers, but most writers for me, because art is half the writing. So if you don't like the artist, it's tough to read whatever book. What is it? Saga has always been a B-level book to me, which is fine. I mean, I like B-level books. It's C-level books I don't like.
Is Saga? I'm trying to think what's out there for image. Would Saga still be? They're probably, now that Walking Dead's been gone for a while, it's their number one book, or is there? Do you think there's? Saga's got a pretty big subculture, right? So.
Yeah, I can't think of anything. Maybe Spawn. Now that it's been relaunched.
Depends how many people jump back on.
A lot of people jumped back on Spawn. If after issue 300, I don't know if the sales are down to now, but its print run was up around 100,000 copies for at least.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's how much it went up with after issue 3. A lot of Spawn collectors jumped back on with issue 300.
What did they? Did Todd come back in full? I wasn't sure what happened.
I don't think he did. Well, there are now 5 Spawn books.
Right.
I don't know if he's drawing any of them, but he's writing some of them. Thankfully, not the one I'm buying.
It's still. I know it's been talked about to death, but when we talk about being impressed by 100,000 print run, like we all know what I'm going to say, which is back during the peak, like a 20th or whatever, or 10th or 20th or whatever it was. But okay.
Well, those million print runs were such a brief time.
Yeah, for sure.
There were.
Yeah,
it's not like.
I mean, the story goes. Yeah, the story like when by the time you get to 92, 93, when Silver Sable came out, the story goes that Marvel was kind of freaking out that it kind of underperformed. It's like, what would you expect? It's Silver, but like it was really kind of a barometer of that, or an indicator you're post peak. You can't just put out anything and throw
right.
Like silver and embossed lettering on the logo and expect it to.
You can't expect every single thing you put out to sell a million copies.
Yeah, not a million. But I'll tell you what, though, if there was an episode, I think it was today, of Cartoonist Kayfabe, where they got into the bad girl, like Witchblade and she and that kind of stuff. So I'm saying the Silver Sable did come out as a series around that time. You guys tell me, was Marvel or anyone else trying to compete with the bad girl stuff of like the mid to late 90s? Like, or they
not
just not
really.
go there?
Not really. That wasn't really their thing.
Marvel, I felt in that time, didn't believe they had competition.
Mm-hmm.
And anything they put out is what they were going to put out. It's there was the whole thing of the Image look was just the Marvel look of the 90s. All the Image guys left. So at that time period, I think whoever was looking at the numbers just believed they'll keep making that particular number, no matter what it was. That as long as they put a book out and it had a number one on it, they would be fine. They they only see what's happening right then and there.
And I can still remember there was one time Marvel had a softball team in the 90s, and like once a summer they'd play the DC Comics softball team. And I forget what year it was, but of course there was a rivalry where someone drew a market share pie chart, because that summer Marvel's market share was like 76%. It was like the highest percentage it had ever been. And I just remember being stunned by how high Marvel's percentage was. Like DC was like, I think they were less than 25%. So there's just this pie chart, to taunt DC with the softball game. But it's like, that's how dominant Marvel was briefly in the early 90s.
Well, that's how you get to Death of Superman and Batman breaking his back and that kind of stuff, where they just need stunts to, and it worked. It worked for a brief period.
And the Image guys leaving. Because, they were one of the big reasons for that dominance.
Sure, for sure. They were the rock stars. But to me, there's my personal knowledge, or not knowledge, but kind of like being aware of what was going on in comics. I have a good 10-year gap between like 95, like when I graduated college, that was when I thought I was going to work at Marvel, and that was when everything collapsed. And then like me working comics again and getting back to Marvel in 2004. I have a good decade there where I really wasn't aware too much of what was going on in comics. I would like occasionally like stroll into a comic store, pick up a Wizard, or that kind of thing. So there was a lot of stuff. Like I knew of the Grant Morrison X-Men stuff, and Jim Lee joining DC do Hush and that kind of stuff. But there was, especially that second half of the 90s, there was like at post-crash, I really don't know what I'm aware of from that time. Like you could name books. Most of them are probably like, when did that happen?
Yeah. You and a lot of people.
Yeah, I think I'm alone with that. Right.
That is, I can tell you my own experience. My friends and I self-published a book. I think it was in 97, which was about the worst time you could be out there publishing a book, because it was we went and did the Pittsburgh Comic Con with our book and whatever, and it wasn't just us. It's like nobody was interested in comics at that Comic Con. People would like what there was like a couple of autographs they wanted from movie, and they'd like walk through all the comics tables, not even looking at anyone or anything. And it was crazy.
It was when these shows started to become more media shows than it were, right? Is that kind of like?
They weren't even that much of a media show, but it was just stunning to me how little the comic book fans at a comic convention were even interested in the comics. It was like the whole area we were in with other small press and large press people, and just no one cared. No one was interested in comics. Like I said, this is like 97. No one was interested in comics. No one cared. The only thing, this is when I learned, the only table that was doing any business was across the aisle from us. What were they named? The Three-Legged Black Cat Society. And they did their own mini comics. And they had it was I have a picture of them somewhere in my album. I forget her name. I hope I wrote it down on the picture. This one woman and her boyfriend and a friend of hers. There was another woman. There was three of them working the table. And they had mini comics. Not even, there were people there from Marvel and DC and had full-size comics, and they had mini comics. And their table was the busiest. And they would sometimes have like their comics were all mini comics, photocopied. Sometimes they'd get like specialty paper to make their covers out of. You could get you could just buy like paper with shiny holograms on it and put that around your mini comic. And they were the only table in that place that was busy all weekend. And the one woman whose name I forget was like, if you learn one thing this weekend, it's that women like shiny things. And that was what they were selling. Their mini comics with shiny covers. And it was just like, I was just like, wow, that is stunning. Like they were the only ones doing any business. And it was these shiny covers on mini comics. It was crazy.
I'd be curious to see. So it was like kind of hollow foil they'd buying.
Yeah. Hollow foil stuff that you just buy. I can't even remember if they, because I think they just wrapped it. I don't even think you can print on it.
I like that. Yeah.
But they just wrapped it around their, that was the cover of their mini comic, this shiny. They had some, neat mini comics. They did some clever stuff with it.
Mm-hmm.
And her boyfriend was like, it was really weird too. I can't remember his boyfriend's name, but he was this briefly hot indie artist who put out one comic that was like Horror Baby or something. And it was like a small indie comic hit. And like every indie company was trying to get him to do more of that. And he was just like, I don't want to. And he'd come back to it. He's like, they wanted me to do another. And it was just like, he actually had a hit. It was like the only one who had a hit. And I'd never heard of it. I can't remember the name of it. And it's like, he didn't want to do anymore. He's like, I want to do something. And I was just like, wow, you're the only one who's in demand. And you don't want to do it.
Did you guys go elsewhere? Did you guys go? I don't even know if Mocha existed back then. Did you guys try to go elsewhere?
We went to a couple of places. It was, Pittsburgh was the big one. We went to the New York Comic Con. Nothing going on. Just nothing. 97 was terrible for putting out your own comic, and just nothing helped us.
When you say New York, that was probably the Big Apple one at the time, though.
Yeah, the Big Apple one.
Yeah.
Right. Who Ed Murr forever hates that guy now because he bumped us from a table because somebody bigger came along.
I know his name. I forget his name.
Carbonaro.
He's been on it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been around forever.
Yeah.
Ed holds a grudge. I'm like, Ed, you can let go of the grudge. It doesn't matter. He doesn't care. I'm bringing up his name, and Ed does not like because Ed organized the whole thing, got the table,
Yeah.
And we got there, and he's like, "Oh, you don't have a table." So you can imagine Ed was pissed.
Yeah. Who can blame him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We eventually got a table, so I can't remember. Someone we knew was just like, "Come on over here, sit at my table." So I think that's how it went. But
does Mocha? Do they still do their, barring COVID? Do they still do that show? Or is that
yes,
kind of
Ed goes to Mocha every year. He likes it a lot, and so do
he attends it, or does he sell at it? Actually,
I think he attends it. I don't think he sells at it. Like I think Dean Haspiel sells at it. I know that. And some of I know some of Ed's cartooning students have sold stuff at it too.
I'm always curious about the economics of that stuff. Yeah, I'm always curious about how well you can do. Not that I'm to me the money isn't the be all end all, but still I would still like to make a living doing creative things.
I've heard people say they do well. Man. What was that?
I could not sell my books at Mocha because my books were too superhero.
I've been told. Yeah, I've been told my stuff would sell at Mocha, but I've just never wanted to. I still want to go. When is that? March?
I don't. It's been so long since I did a Mocha show because, like I said, I never did well there. My books won't sell because they were too polished. We used to joke around. Like if I put it on copy paper and stapled it, it'll sell that way.
Yeah. It's really a sort of zine kind of show, art zine kind of show.
Right.
Rather than superhero, rather than Marvel Comics kind of show.
Right. And maybe sketchbook kind of stuff, Wilson.
I keep wanting to go, like Ed goes almost, he's like, I should go to Mocha with me. I'm like, yeah, I should. And then it passes me by every year.
Mm-hmm.
What does it stand for again? Do you know what Mocha is, Paolo? I don't even know if he knows. It's the...
Which one of the...
museum of
Is it like the SPX of the East?
Yeah, kind of. It's like, what is it? It's even smaller and New York City art student-ish than SPX. From what I'm told, like I said, I still haven't been there.
Are the
Museum
people
of
more
Art.
or less insufferable?
It's the Museum
I
of
would-
Comic and Cartoon Art.
I would have to imagine that to your average superhero comic fan, Mocha is the most insufferable. Wilson
I feel like,
is
you know-
too mainstream. Wilson and
Right.
his, small comic book is too mainstream for Mocha.
Let's say you had the 20-year-old version of Matt Groening Life in Hell, that kind of stuff. That probably would do great at Mocha if it was on like copy paper, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Or Crumb kind of stuff, obviously.
Yeah. And like Dean Haspiel, I know, has gone to Mocha. He does the King of the Indies, the King of the mini comics. They called Dean in the 90s. I think he actually donated his mini comic collection to the Smithsonian. I don't know, must be a decade ago now.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the 90s, Dean Haspiel, I think they either called him King of the Indies or King of the Mini Comics, because he was at all the shows, he was making mini comics, and other mini comic makers would give him their mini comic. So he ended up with so many of them that he donated them to the Smithsonian because nobody else had so many mini comics from the 90s.
And then there was one in Brooklyn for a while that was even more indie than Mocha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that they had in a gym on a campus in Brooklyn. And,
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just so indie to the point where it was like I wasn't even sure what I was seeing, because there wasn't only, there were comic books, and then other people had things that they knitted, but I don't know if they were selling that or just sitting there knitting. And I ended up buying a black and white book that looked really good, but for the life of me, I couldn't even tell you what the story was about. But it was the only thing that kind of looked like this was something I think I could read. Something that I would be interested in. And again, when I say it's more indie than Mocha, it was like, I even asked for like a business card so I can, maybe I could use the artwork, or maybe I could. Again, I like getting business cards. And nothing. I think he had something that said something else, and he wrote his contact.
Because I think I name down on a scrap of paper for you.
Yeah, because I wanted to, like, if he had an Instagram or something that I could look at more of his artwork from. Right. And it was like, I had fun. I spent the whole day at this thing, but enough that I saw every single table. And out of everything there, I think I bought 2 books out of the whole thing. And it was like, again, it's one of those weird things of how indie can you get? How far on one side of it can you get compared to, other things? But Mocha, I do enjoy hanging out once in a while.
Was that in Brooklyn or in the Bronx? It was Brooklyn?
That was Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I want to say it's called the Brooklyn Comic Fest, but I'm not positive.
Yeah.
Where's Mocha now? Is it in the Armory?
Mocha, let's see, this year is April 1st and 2nd. And according to the website, they still have it listed as the Metropolitan Pavilion, but I don't know if that's where they're actually doing the.
We should go. I should finally go to Mocha.
And they're now connected with the Society of Illustrators.
What was that?
They're now connected with the Society of Illustrators. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that didn't the Society of Illustrators may have bought them or something.
Okay.
Who knew the Society of Illustrators could buy anything?
Yeah. Okay. So according to the website, they're back at that, what they're calling the Metropolitan Pavilion, which is where they originally had the show, which is off 6th Avenue on 18th Street.
Okay.
What's the date? It's March something?
It is this year.
April 1?
It is April 1st and 2nd.
Saturday and Sunday?
I'd be curious to go and just observe and just see
I might just
see-
finally go to see one. Maybe on April 1st. Wonder if you have
Powell's
to
like
buy
those
tickets.
insufferable people.
Applications are now closed,
It's fine.
so it's
Well,
already
you just wanna
sold
give 'em
out
a
for
look.
like a table.
The one thing I feel bad about always is you walk the aisle such a thing, and I'm like, don't make eye contact with the creator because like they look so desperate to sell like a copy of their book for like $1, and it's just like I feel like bad.
Just bring some dollars and give them to them. Come on.
Yeah, it's like
Don't be
The
such a
aisles and
cheap
toss the
maniac.
dollars out. Don't
Nah,
even
I'm not
pick
Dollar
up
for
the
you,
dough.
dollar for you, dollar for you, dollar for
Yeah.
you, dollar for you. Come on.
I mean, in terms of like production value, they don't mind this. Like it's everything from literally photocopied and folded in half and hand stapled to maybe a little better than that, right? That's what we're talking about, right?
You should hold on. Let me show you this.
Mhm.
A one-day pass is $18, and a weekend
fuck
pass is
that.
$25.
Right.
Public
Right,
Transport
exactly.
Magazine. There's even an Ask Jared. Not me. This is just 2 sheets of paper, but I got this from last semester in the middle of one of my classes. All of a sudden, some of my students were like, "Oh, Public Transport Magazine just dropped." The people who make this just leave them in the subway and post and geotag them and post them in which subway they are. So then you have to run out and get some copies of it. So some of my
so they
students got a copy from me.
they put a tag. I understand this. They put a tag on the actual publication.
No, they on their Instagram, I think it is. They say,
I see.
This is in the 14th. I think this one was in the 14th Street subway. We just dropped some copies off in the 14th Street. Where is that? 8th Avenue, 7th? I forget where.
On the
subway.
platform or something.
So
Okay.
they went out and got some copies of it, and they're all excited about it. They're like, "Cool!"
I appreciate the guerrilla marketing kind of creative marketing.
I thought that was neat.
Yeah.
Just for getting your, and it's just this, little zine full of jokes and goofy stuff. Things I plan to invent someday when I'm not busy. Fruit that moves
Wilson,
for painters looking for a challenge. It's obviously it must be an art student thing.
Wilson stuff being too high of production value for the taste of that audience, right? So my interest is that Wilson, you do relatively short runs. This keywords relative, right, of your stuff. Is that right? And use those printers are able to do kind of POD printing for like short runs, right?
Right. I used most of the stuff I used was Kablam printing, mainly because it's print on demand, and we take them with us to cons, stuff like that. We were available on Comixology before they did whatever they did to stab themselves in the foot. Not shoot themselves in the foot, because it's easy to shoot yourself in the foot with a gun, but to stab yourself in the foot, that takes effort. So the books are now in limbo, so to speak, because in order to get our books back on Comixology, we have to reload everything for their KDP or what have you.
Right, for KDP, right? Yeah.
And if you're not getting a steady income from them, what's the point?
Exactly, because we weren't doing gangbusters beforehand. But again, so it's basically just we do low print runs, and when we do go to cons, we sell them at cons.
Bad Idea and a couple other places have been I've been doing some stuff for. Have been using a place called Ready Comics, which I think once again does short run print on demand stuff. But
I love that. Like I did a very, not a comic but a prose book, a very niche book years ago that was for a very niche audience. That's why I say it. And it's this is like a 400-page thing, but like at the time I used iUniverse to make it available on Amazon and elsewhere. Just a lot of work, a lot of fun. I made some money with it, but it was again a very niche audience. It was kind of a passion project, like over here. But I love the print-on-demand stuff, whether it be T-shirts or printed page. I think it's great.
They've come a long way with the print-on-demand stuff. except in shipping. What have I used? I forget the name of the site.
When you
It's a
say
print
shipping,
on
you mean like
demand.
the actual cost of the shipping.
The actual cost to ship when you order a book from them to ship it is crazy.
You mean
Like,
a one book, or if you're ordering like
one
100
book
copies for yourself?
or 100 books is even worse.
Okay.
I can't remember the name of the place I used. I'm gonna have to look in my bookmarks, but I must be 5 to 10 years ago now.
Mhm.
I made a few books just because I wanted to make books and try out print on demand.
Mhm.
Blurb, that's it. Blurb.com. So I tried this blurb.com place, and you want to price the book at a reasonable price so that people will buy it. So I think I had my whatever book I had priced at about $15, but it cost somewhere around $8 to ship it.
Yeah.
So that's crazy. And then I was like, well, maybe I will front the money, order a few hundred copies, and the shipping will get lower. No. It would cost to ship me, like I think I was looking at about 200 or 300 copies. It would cost them $120 to ship it to me.
Yeah. So
I was
there's
just
no
like,
like economies.
No,
It seems like there's no
I'm like,
economies of
that's
scale when you.
insane.
Yeah, it is the same.
There's no. I'm like, that's insane. I can that the shipping was like half the price of the printing. It was just nuts how expensive it was at Blurb. So that's why I kind of stopped using them, just because of that. Shipping was just too expensive. And people would even say, well, I wanted to buy your book, but shipping was crazy.
When I look at guys like Mike Mayhew and John Tyler, Christopher, I really like their art, right? And they basically are in the business of selling their own variants. That's what I get out of it, right? I feel like they have some arrangement with Marvel, and they will buy. Well, they're not printing themselves; they're probably making some kind of arrangement with Marvel. But the thing I would be concerned about, like if I was actually the one literally sending these out from my home to fans / customers, is the condition thing where people are crazy about the dings and all. And as a collector, I understand it. I understand that, but like, and then also, sometimes I think they even have an arrangement with CGC, where like, we'll send it directly to CGC. You guys slab them, and we guarantee you a 9.8 or 9.6.
CGC now has a service where you can send them a case of books, and they'll pull out the 9.8s and grade them and leave the rest behind. How crazy is that?
Yeah, it's not so crazy. It's like it's. I have heard that, like they'll like, even with your own stuff, if you want stuff graded, like it's not just like 300 of the same comic. We might be talking about the same thing, where it's like, okay, I only want to grade if it's going to get a 9.8. Otherwise, leave it alone.
This is of the same comic. You send it right from the printer to CGC.
Right.
But I have to imagine that's easy money for CGC. Because when you're grading a modern comic, all you're grading is the cover.
Right.
Because when you're grading an old comic, you got to look through it.
Inside. Yeah.
You got to make sure that there's
the Marvel value stamp could be missing.
Make sure the Marvel value stamp. So that you have to actually look at the whole, make sure there's not a page ripped. When you get a new comic, there's going to be nothing wrong with the inside.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, is that GGG Russo's coming to join us? Look at that.
Hey.
What's up?
GGG Russo's.
Yo. It's been a while.
How you doing, GG?
I'm all right. How are you?
Good.
All
Good
right.
to see you.
I'm immediately admiring the figures in your background. I think those are figures over your.
Oh yeah, I'll have to point you to the episode where he takes us on a tour.
I was on that. It was.
You're on that episode?
Amazing. It was quite amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty phenomenal, actually.
So, what are you working on tonight, Chris?
Preparing for a author visit tomorrow.
Ooh, an author visit. Where are you going? A library or a comic shop or a?
It's going to be a school.
A school
with no class. Because it's on Saturday.
Uh-huh.
But they're having events there and one of them they're going to have some local artists guys just show up and draw for the kids.
Uh-oh.
It's
Tit
a
Goblin
story
says Chris episodes are the best episodes. All
Oh
right.
my god! Oh my god! And I contribute nothing. Most of the time, I just come in and listen to you guys talk about comics that I've never seen or read while I'm working. So I'll take the compliment regardless. Thank you.
So what do you have to do to prepare for? You have to pull out stuff to show and sell, and is it going to be selling or giving, or do you have any idea?
Not really. I've done those before where I have to present, like
Right.
I show up as G-Man author Chris Jeruso, when the books were coming out.
Yep.
And then I kind of have to I know it's brand new stuff to everyone, so nobody really knows who
Right.
I am. So you gotta pitch hey, okay, here's the characters and here's some sequences and you gotta
Right.
which always makes me uncomfortable because I feel like I'm begging them to like me.
Yep.
So I didn't want to do that this time. So I'm just trying to come up with ways to just draw and show them how to draw. Like they don't care who you are. Unless you're their favorite artist or author, who between the ages of 5 and 10, do they even who are they even gonna know? Not me.
Yeah.
But so I'm gonna show them what I was doing when I was their age. I want to show them something that they can if they want to, they can do it right now. And when I was their age, I would white out the words in the newspaper and the comic strips in the newspaper, and then write in my own dialogue. So it's if you don't know, if you don't think you can draw, and you don't have any ideas, that's a really easy thing to do. That's fun and silly. So I'm just gonna do that.
Okay. Do you have pages prepared, all whited out?
I have a couple, but I need to get a few more, I think.
Okay.
Let's see if I can
Is
find one.
Smitty going with you?
He's not.
Anyone else from your studio going? Those local artists?
Nope. Basically, I got roped into this, and I didn't want to force anyone else to have to come to.
To waste a Saturday?
Yeah. So here's an example, right?
So you white it out?
So this is
Oh,
the
that one's
original.
not whited out.
That's the original.
Let's blow it up. That's the original, and you're gonna white it out.
Yeah, if you like it. Well, I'm not going to white it out because I can just do it in Photoshop and print it out.
Right.
So that's what I've done here, and this is my test run.
I want to
This is
learn how to
Charlie
do
Brown.
a backflip.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll be your coach. Get ready, get set, go. That works. I like it.
And then if you want to do another one,
Sure, why not?
same strip, different words. Might not be quite as legible.
I'm gonna grow some hair. That's pretty good. We should try to grow a beard too. Not like that, but I think it's pretty good. It's too heavy, and it's making you turn upside down.
Mad Libs.
I think
Yeah,
the kids
basically.
will love it.
Fill in
They'll
the
love
blanks.
And so you're going to do a
So
drawing
it
demo?
doesn't
for them?
matter who that guy is. They're going to see that and they're going to go, "Oh, I can do that."
Right. And you can do a drawing demo?
Yeah, there's going to be 2 other guys there, so I think we'll probably do a little bit of drawing.
Do you know the 2 other guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Did they rope you in, or did they get roped in separately?
I got they were roped in separately. I got roped in by a third party that's not going to even be there.
Ooh. Ooh.
But so it's like I just feel like if I say no to something like that, I'm a jerk.
Got to help the kids out.
And realistically, it's like what? It's like what is it? It's a few hours. It's not even a few hours. It's like 2 hours.
Yeah.
On a Saturday. But the second it's suggested to me, I'm instantly filled with anxiety until that happens and is done, and then there's the preparation like I'm doing now. There's that amount of time, and all that time is like making my book late. I'm not drawing the book. That's the job, and I'm not doing it now. Well, you should manage. It sounds like you're having trouble managing your time. You should. You know what you should do? You know what you should do? You should manage your time better. You really ought to manage your time better. That's what you should.
You know what you should do?
You should manage your time better. It sounds like you don't know how to manage your time.
You should stop being so anxious. That's what you should do. All the kid versions will end up with Charlie Brown doing a TikTok dance with his flip. Hey, Charlie Brown, want to try out this new TikTok dance? No, I'm no good at dancing.
That's
sure
good.
You are.
See, that's how easy it is. That's great.
Damn, we're going.
We could do Lucy with a German accent. You will learn how to dance. But I don't want to dance. You will learn how to dance now.
Tonight on Sprockets, we learn how to dance.
So you guys get it. What did I miss? I'm coming in late.
Oh, you missed. We've been talking about the law a lot tonight.
Oh no.
That's been tonight's main topic. The because I got a facsimile edition of Whiz Comics #1, the first Captain Marvel.
Yep. That's where he's like, Superman thinks he's so cool because he can smash a car on some rocks. I'll show you what I can do with a car.
There we go. That brought us into talking about the lawsuit between DC and Fawcett over Captain Marvel. And we, Paolo actually looked it up eventually, and we figured out because none of our memories were right on how the lawsuit ended.
Look, okay, so let me guess. Let's see if my memory is right. The lawsuit never did end because Fawcett folded?
Nope.
And Fawcett never folded.
Well, I know DC ended up buying everything, but much, much later.
Right.
Yes.
What happened was the lawsuit, Fawcett won the lawsuit. DC appealed. Fawcett won the appeal again, but then the judge said, they may have won this appeal, but they may lose on something else next time. And by that time, Fawcett said, we may as well settle with DC. And despite
they may lose next
lawsuit,
time if I'm adequately bribed next time.
And that led us to the discussion of everybody's got a copy of Superman these days. When did it change? When did it because the judge even said something like DC could copyright like the feats that Superman did, like lifting a car. It's like if Superman lifted a car, that meant no one else could lift a car. Somehow the judge said that. And that led us to like, well, when did this all end? Because everybody, Squadron Supreme in the 70s, Marvel had their copies of DC characters. And Paolo found a case from, what was it, 1983?
Yeah, so Warner sued ABC over the Great American Hero, the TV series. And the judge decided the opposite of the 50s judge, said, no, it's not the way you draw powers. You gotta give context to the stories.
It's not the feats.
The characters are nothing alike.
Yeah. So, and it was interesting. Never heard that before. So, the first judge said you could copyright the feats. The judge in 1986 said, no, you can't copyright feats of strength. You can only copyright the character who does the feats of strength. So, that's what a lot of our show is about tonight, contemplating that stuff. It was fun. We go in all sorts of weird directions.
Yeah, we went to logos for a little while. It was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, talking about early Marvel logos and who made them.
Mm-hmm.
Saul Brodsky and Artie Simic with Stan Lee. And I showed off some of the comics.
Speaking of Stan Lee,
that's what you're
this
doing.
little exercise I'm doing, is that much different than the way Stan Lee wrote comics?
No, it is not. It is not at all.
No, by doing those Mad Libs, you are the instant sole creator of those comics.
Excelsior.
I picked up plush number 4, which continues to be one of the weirdest comics out there. This team does some weird comics. What are their names again? Doug Wagner, an artist, is the writer. Daniel Hilliard is the artist. Rico Renzi is the colorist, and Ed Dukeshire is the letterer. And it's this one is about the killer furries against the corrupt small town cops. And it's just so nutty. It is hard to explain how nutty this comic is. But it's very enjoyably nutty. And I think it's like a 6-issue mini. Their last one, Vinyl, was a 6-issue mini. Which Vinyl was the FBI versus Vinyl was the serial killers versus the killer cult with a retired FBI agent in the middle. So I think these guys just take two wacky groups and pit them against each other. But it's very entertaining. Good stuff. Plush. Have you read any good comics lately, Chris?
I can't remember.
Did you get the latest Savage Dragon?
Yeah, I did.
Came out about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, but I actually, so when I kind of, he said I'm in his proofreading circle.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So I read them in JPEG form, and then when they come out, I kind of just I'm like, well, I already read this, and then I go to the letters page. That's it. So I don't even remember what happened in the last one.
Do you read Ant too? Are you on?
Yes.
Okay.
Ant's really interesting because it's like this obsession that only Eric has.
Yeah. With fitting Ant into Savage Dragon continuity.
He's like, no, I got this idea in my head and I have to show you how it works. And he's even retreading some stuff that he did already.
Yeah.
Like there's some of the stuff is just the same scenes, and they're just the dialogue's a little bit different, or he might have re-inked some of it, and so all of that's interesting to me as a guy that's obsessed with him. But I don't know if normal people.
Ant is not a comic for normal people.
Yeah. But at some point, he's going to have to get to a part where there's nothing left to rehash or reframe.
Right.
And it'll be all new stuff going forward. And I wonder
will he be interested then?
Huh?
Will he be interested then, or will he stop doing it once he's clear?
You want me to try to get him on? I don't think right now would be I don't think I'd get him on at this moment, but
another time? Sure.
I could get him on another time, maybe.
We'll ask him if he wants to come on and talk to us. Why not?
I'll ask him.
Just a bunch of goofballs.
He does a lot of podcasts, so.
All right. We'll see if we can have him on for a special event.
A very special episode.
Very special episode. I have never met Eric Larson, so. But Chris Geruso is why I'm an Eric Larson and Savage Dragon fan.
Were you not there the day when he showed up at Marvel?
No, I was not. Was that the day when everybody was there? Eric Larson. I don't know. I know Rob Liefeld. I know there was one. The only one stories ever told about were Rob Liefeld, but I think it was like 1990. I wasn't there that day. But I just remember Rob Liefeld got everybody mad by disrespecting John Romita, just paying him no respect and being not very nice to him. That's the only thing I remember about that visit.
So that
I wasn't there for.
So now you're talking about 1990.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was a sophomore in high school at that time.
I remember a visit of Rob just after Heroes Reborn. So I would say this is probably 95, 96, maybe. All I recall is that they had to remove Ralph's door and put it into into my office, into the library, actually. And it was easier to remove the door than it was to remove all the images that were on Ralph's door.
And why would the images on Ralph's door be of significance, Wilson?
I'm not too sure, because Ralph decorated with so many different things.
There was probably something making fun of Rob on there.
There was a lot of covers making fun of Rob. And there was even a cover taken off my door that Smitty drew. And so there was a Baron Zemo cover. And the way it was drawn, it was just the way the stylized that Rob drew Baron Zemo. It looked like a bowl of Jello. So Smitty cut out the Zemo helmet and put it on a page that he drew. And he drew an intern eating a bowl of Jello, and it was like Baron Jello. And it was a funny thing. And that was on my door for a long time. And that mysteriously disappeared off my door not too long before Rob's visit. But Ralph's door tended to have a lot of humor on it. And it was everything from comic book covers to Xerox copies to letters that he received from various fans who may or may not have disliked certain artists. And eventually, right before the visit, that the whole door was removed. And those doors were heavy. They were metal doors. And it was like just removed, and Ralph was missing a door for a day.
Wow.
That was also long before my time.
Yep. But that was the famous visit I remember from the Image guys, where John Romita was also, they wanted him, Marvel kind of wanted John Romita to show them some tips and tricks. And they couldn't care less, of course, because they were young and on top of the world.
I remember the first time I saw Eric Larson's art. It was that issue of the Punisher he did when the Punisher goes to Japan and he teams up with the Shadow Masters. Somebody else synced them. I can't remember who. Which is why it kind of sometimes it doesn't look like Larson.
So
I don't know if I know that.
You could ask Eric, if we do get him on, you could ask him about that day, because I don't think that he would. I think he would be a guy that would want to spend as much time as possible around John Romita.
Yeah. You would think so.
I
don't know if he was there that day. I don't know who was there with Rob.
That's what I'm saying.
I can't remember now.
I do not believe Eric was there that day with Rob. Because all I remember
Yeah.
was Rob walking around by himself that day. Because he did pass my office, poked his head in. I said, "What's up?" He was like, "What's up?" and kept walking. And that was my only interaction with Rob. And I would have remembered if I met Eric that day. So that was not a day Eric came in. I do not recall when and if Eric came in. And the day that all the Image guys showed up, like Tom DeFalco tells that story, that was way before I showed up.
Mhm.
And what I remember from Tom saying is like he only wished that the Image guys told him what they were planning to do that day, because he said, I would have missed the meeting because there was no reason for me to be there.
Nah. Yeah, I think the day I'm thinking of that I wasn't there for was before they decided to do Image. It was just they happened to be in town for some reason. Maybe it was a con. It's so long ago and I wasn't there, so I can't really remember. I just remember the aftermath of lots of people in the bullpen and Marvel being upset at Rob's behavior towards John Romita. Because if you want to get people, at Marvel upset, treat John Romita badly. That was just the way it was, because he was the nicest guy in the world and everybody loved him. So
yeah,
if you're treating him badly,
Didn't Marvel treat him badly?
John Romita, no,
I'm
he
just
was on
I'm just
staff
guessing.
for-
I'm just guessing probably, but
well, yeah, probably at some point but he was one of the winners though. He had a staff job for 25 years and retired. So
It
he
depends
was
if you
probably
think it's. It depends if you think it's respectable to have the art director doing pay stubs.
yeah. The editors barely listened to him in the 90s when I was there. That listening to the art director was optional. It was the editors who were really in charge. And a lot of them didn't want to bother listening to John Romita. They had their own ideas. Whether they were any good or not was immaterial. But very few people in comics have jobs with Marvel or DC, or I should say, very few creative people, especially in comics, have jobs for 25 years at Marvel or DC and get to retire. You don't retire. Even editors rarely get to retire. They're usually fired before then. So in that context, they didn't rip him off. But in the context of him generally being an artist, he probably wasn't paid what he really deserved. He put Spider-Man on the map for a generation or two, and he put Spider-Man on the map for licensing. So
I was just showing somebody today. Do you know about his role in the cover to Classic X-Men #1, drawn by Arthur Adams? You know this?
No.
He did the layout right for Arthur Adams, and then
Yeah,
I've
Arthur
seen
Adams.
yeah,
Arthur Adams took a stab at it,
yeah.
and you just look at it and you're like, yeah, that's pretty good. This guy can really draw. But just as a cover composition, it just it wasn't any. It didn't look like what we saw, and what we ended up seeing was laid out by John Romita. John Romita said, "No, do it like this," and then the improvement is astronomical.
It is. I've seen both. But the one that ultimately became the cover, it's actually one of my favorite covers of all time.
It's
I'm
great.
I love white backgrounds too, where the characters are just kind of on, arranged on it.
Just this week or last week, Rob Liefeld tweeted out the only cover he ever did over a John Romita layout, and he hates it. He thinks the cover's terrible.
What was it? Was it New Mutants cover?
New Mutants Annual or something like that?
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Bunch of guys standing there. It's not the best cover ever. It's not the worst cover ever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think John Romita redrew a couple of figures too or something. But Rob is not happy with it.
This past week, maybe it was on our Arthur Adams fan page. It probably was on Facebook. Someone posted, I think, what his original samples were that he sent into Marvel, like 82-ish. I don't know if I've ever seen those. I mean, I think that's maybe what ended up in the slush file. Is it a couple pages of those Avengers? Like it's like they're like cleaning dishes or something. Does it sound familiar, Wilson?
No, the artwork that has been looking for. I've seen it once. He submitted artwork about a kid coming back to school and trying to get revenge on a teacher. And the teacher spins around and she has like her own Uzi or something like that. Very generic kind of story type of thing that was never signed. And I remember seeing it once and it was like, we have no idea who this artwork was. And it got put away. Years later, found out it was Art Adams, and we wanted to reuse that artwork in one of the trade paperbacks, but we could never find the art again because since we didn't know who did it, we didn't know the story, since it was basically a submissions type stuff, it never got cataloged correctly, and it just got piled in with the rest of the artwork.
It got raided all over the store.
What?
I'm a little bit confused. These were pages that were part of a bigger story that were out of context because there was no Marvel characters on the actual pages.
No Marvel characters on the actual pages. So these might have been his first submissions to Marvel. That was just a generic story that he did himself, and don't know if it was what it be. Again, it was just people were sending in artwork, but there was something there that caught an editor's eye. Mm-hmm. That he at least was kept in touch with. Mm-hmm. But the artwork, they never marked the artwork what it was. It never got printed. So we only knew of it. And then when it was talked about again, it's like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. Now that we have some content, I could go looking for it, but I was never able to find it again.
Got Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Basically.
Put in the winter hat. Another artist who's killing it, Junkyard Joe, Gary Frank. This has been the best Gary Frank artwork I've seen. He's drawing expressions and gestures and facial. I was just like, well, I'm used to Gary Frank's sort of stiff superhero artwork. Even like the one he did before this, Geiger, was okay. But this one's been really good. Drawing kids' faces, even with teenagers with expressions on them. And I think there's one more issue of this. Injured old man, scared expression. I've never seen such expression coming from Gary Frank. It's really,
I mean, his style evolved. His style evolved a lot when he was on. I think we probably know him all for when he was on Hulk originally, right? In like the early 90s, early 90s. And then I didn't see his stuff because I was out of comics for like 8-10 years. Then he was on Superman, and like his style seemed pretty drastically different. More like this is what you're showing now.
Well, even like that, the book he did before this that I got was called Geiger. There it is. And even I don't think Geiger was this good. I think his work on Junkyard Joe is better than his work on Geiger, even. And his work, even like he also what did he do? Doomsday Clock for DC. And his work on Doomsday Clock was very meticulous and well done, but not nearly as expressive as this. I've always kind of liked Gary Frank's artwork and storytelling and drawing, but he's never been able to make me feel anything. So I always find his work a little stiff and off and arm's length. This isn't arm's length. This is kind of, he's inviting you right into the drama of the characters, which I think is different for him. He's not just showing you the characters. I think, like I said, illustrate literally means to show. And I think some illustrators are they show you sort of the surface of something. And I think that's what Gary Frank has always been to me. He's been a good illustrator. He shows me things, but it's the surface of them. I think he's getting under the surface a little more, which is, nice to see. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I remember when he did Supreme Power with Straczynski. When they did it at Marvel Max, they tried a Squadron Supreme reboot. It was called Supreme Power.
Right.
And it was kind of boring. Nothing happened. Even when stuff happened, it seemed like nothing happened.
Right.
No movement. The attempt at doing expressions was there.
Yeah.
And yeah, you could follow the story. I mean, it's not like there wasn't any narrative. But
There's never anything wrong with it. It just, like I said, it just didn't involve me that much. So I don't even know what changed. Like the attempted expressions was there. I would have. He probably, even in Geiger, had an attempted expressions. But here in Junkyard Joe, he's succeeded. The first issue, especially when he told a war story in Vietnam, very emotional, which is not what I expect from Gary Frank. And now I'll be expecting it more. So he better live up to it. That's what I say. But I've been enjoying this series much more than Geiger, which I thought was okay. Just okay.
I've seen other people mention Junkyard Joe in a good way. Out of all the comics that are coming out right now, it's probably the one that's most fun to read. There's nothing fun on the stands.
Well, Plush is very fun, but I don't know. Let's see. What would I describe as fun in this group I've got here? Local Man was good. I wouldn't describe it as fun. Damn them all, good. I don't know if I'd describe it as fun. Saga, I'd say, was fun. Like this issue especially. Cancel America was not fun. Always fun, but that's a facsimile from the 1940. Ice Cream Man is also always fun. I forgot to point this one out. Ice Cream Man was a story of a couple of tramps traveling the country on by boxcar, and something bad happens to them. Plush, I'd call Plush fun. This issue of Monstrous was really, I wouldn't call it fun, and I don't know if anybody could pick up Monstrous 43 and know what was going on. But good issue. I'd explain it to you, but it'd mean nothing to you because, once again, it's a story that's 43 issues deep, and it's not like, Spider-Man from 1967 being 43 issues deep. This has been one big story. So, but good. But Junkyard Joe has been fun and emotional too.
Although
What's the last comic you read, Wilson, that was fun?
The last one that I read that was fun, I had looked through the Superman archives that I have from DC Comics because I wanted to.
What do you mean TikTok?
I made a TikTok of it. One, I wanted to know is when was Superman in a way fun? I remember reading some Silver Age stuff when the Kirk Swan weird things were going on. The various kryptonites would change Superman and things like that. So I always wondered, when did that kind of get started? And I do have reprints of Superman books from various years. And the archive ones, looking through those were interesting because it's all very early stuff. It's from the 30s. And one, I didn't like the layout of the archive book because
Right.
they did not show you all the covers. They just gave you a bunch
Yeah.
of stories. I was bothered by that because I was interested in another thing, like, did the covers tell you what was going on in the stories? In those early Superman books, they weren't. It was just, here's a cover. And it had
Yeah.
nothing to do with the story. And a lot of it was like either war propaganda type stuff and what have you. And the stories that I read were a couple of things that, for some reason, and a few times in a row, the masked crazed scientist was always Luthor under the mask. He just kept changing his outfits. And I thought that was an odd thing in itself. And looking at early books like that, one, it was a bit boring to read.
Mhm.
The fun stuff was these things that before they even became tropes. So it's
Right.
very, Lois getting herself into trouble and Clark Kent coming out. And also what was interesting to look at was the way Superman was being drawn. It was almost seemed like it was the same shot, just flipped. And
Oh.
and it was also, I guess they didn't have flying down pat yet. So there would be an image of him in the air, and it wouldn't be graceful or anything like that. A lot of times he just looks like he was falling. And then a few pages in, they take the same image and flip it. So it's
Ah.
like, this is, I don't know if the stuff is from when they were doing the comic strips and reusing things that way. Because it's just advertised that it was the original creators was writing and drawing it at the time. And as I'm going through it, it's like, this is interesting to look at, but it's not something that I can easily go back to. And it just happened to be a snapshot of that time period, because that happens to be one of the hardcover books I have, because, working at Marvel, we got a lot of that type of stuff for free. So I don't have big volumes of Superman books. And I was online looking at the stuff, what's the time period where it gets a little wacky, and I think that's really the Silver Age type of stuff. So I need to go to the library and pick out some of those big tomes that they have to see that.
I read an article, I don't know, years ago about comic books and the visualization of flying. And they went through the history of how artists, like you said, they didn't have it down yet, how to draw somebody flying. People had, artists had to learn how to visualize drawing somebody flying, and they went through different ways it was visualized over the years. It was kind of interesting to see that, because now we got the flying, it's down, fists in front of you.
Now you have to start from take a knee on the ground position.
Yeah.
Warp the ground
as you leap off it.
And then you go. Yeah.
So there's something also in the 1930s. Aerodynamics were not that important to aviation.
You see him flying here.
Yeah.
And then that shot is used again in here.
Oh, yeah.
And again, it was just something that I noticed that it would be, then at this point, they just put someone in front of them.
Right. I guess that was their flying shot.
Mm-hmm.
Just like they use, the two fists out in front of you. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I cannot fault them for doing that.
Well, I would have to say it's no different than what we have today, except the position is different.
Yeah.
Now you have a guy.
Not
now
quite,
everybody flies with their legs straight out behind them and their arms straight out.
Yeah, that's an aerodynamic concern. And in the 1930s, nobody cared about aerodynamics. Not even airplane companies, because before jet planes, the hardest part was getting the planes to lift off. So they
their main concern would be generating enough lift that they would stay airborne. But
Right.
after jet engines, they could go much faster, so they had to reduce aerodynamic drag. And so we should check around between 1946 and 1950 how they were drawing Superman flying.
Oh yeah.
And here's one of my favorite ones where most of
Let's
this
see.
page he's flying upside down.
Oh yeah. So we can catch the
We can
baby.
catch the baby. Because in this
He's always
story,
got-
baby
He's
is
always
just
got a
jumping out
leg
windows.
bent. He's got a leg bent and one hand out in front of himself.
This
That reminds me.
me.
I actually
There was an
when I
SNL
was
sketch.
when I was in college, there used to be the Museum of Cartoon Arts used to be over in Westchester, where I was going to college, in the mid '80s, late '80s. It's moved down to Florida, may even be closed now. But they once had a show of Superman art. I think it was from around that era, the early '40s. And it was the first, I had never really appreciated, I hadn't seen a ton of Superman art from that era, but I always kind of wrote it off, never liked it much. They had the originals there from that era. They were beautiful. They were just see that art in black and white, full size, 16 inches tall, was just beautiful. They were all like 16 by 20 pages full of that Superman art. And it was like, whoa, really, really nice stuff. It made me appreciate it a lot more once I saw it in person.
These are all 1941 and 42 artwork. Okay, I thought these were
Okay.
the 30 stuff.
Yeah, but try to find something between 46 and 50, because that's when you have the advances in aircraft technology, which means that drag while flying becomes a concern. So you have to reduce the area in front of you when you're flying, which is why it makes sense to start flying like this.
Right. Interesting. The jet pilot era.
And here's Green Arrow, but it's not Green Arrow.
Let's see. Green Arrow. Oh, look at that. Some
He's
Robin
just called
Hood. Some random Robin Hood guy.
Yep, he's called the Archer, and he's evil.
Ah.
And there's even a story in here that has to deal with a mermaid. And as far as I'm aware of, they don't call it Atlantis, and it's I guess pre-Aquaman or I don't know if it's pre-Aquaman, but again, it's one of those things where she has an underground city. I'm just seeing if there's a name in here, and it's not. But the evil fish people, the men, look completely different
Oh yeah.
than her.
They've got fins on the top of their head because that's where you need a fin.
Exactly. and then, of course, the weird way they do fishes, crazy giant monster fishes and stuff like that. So again, it's fun to see, and it's a classic, 9-panel format. And again, a lot of these images, you can see where it's like, oh, they drew this one again and then again. And then the typical bald scientist who sometimes is named Luther and then sometimes it's not. And
It's
again,
fun
here
to
he is
look at, not that fun to read.
flying upside down.
Look at that. In that bent leg, bent arm position, one leg bent, one arm bent, one leg straight, one leg bent. Yeah, so it's weird. Yeah, I guess that's how they visualize them flying in that time.
And that's how they did. And it's like fascinating to watch it and pull from it going, oh, okay, so that's a look that they use over and over again.
Right.
But that's how they were getting it done back then. So I found that to be interesting because it was like, I know I got this art. I got a few of these DC archives that they gave us, and it was like I don't think I ever actually sat down and read through it all. I couldn't get through it all. I read a couple of stories and it was like, okay, but there wasn't anything there that held me other than studying the artwork itself and realizing how they were reusing things over and over again.
That's like, I think it's the Dark Knight Archive #2, which might be the Batman stuff. I can't remember if it's the Batman or detective stuff. But I had that for so many years unlooked at on my shelf. And I finally picked it up and was stunned to see there was an interview with George Russos in it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was like, what is that? And I learned all about George Russos in his early years working on Batman. I was like, I had no idea. I should have picked this up years ago.
Didn't he color Detective 27 or something like that?
No. He Batman #1. He did the background inks on a lot of that stuff. And I didn't know he was famous for making one of his Batman claim to fame was all the large moons that appeared in Batman were because of George Russos. They would give him some small moon to ink, and he'd make it a big moon behind Batman. So that's why everybody knows his name. He's the guy who made all the big moons in Batman.
It was
We
amazing.
used up less ink that way.
My first Go ahead, Paolo.
I just checked the Fleischer cartoon. Superman's flying like he's supposed to. Yeah, that's 41.
And like he's flying like this?
Yeah, he's drawing like this, yeah.
Okay. Wonder why he wasn't never drawn like that.
I feel like I've watched some of the Fleischer cartoons, and it seems like they haven't fully committed to him being able to fly in the beginning.
He's
No,
jumping
he
over
was leaping
building.
buildings in a single bound.
Yeah.
His flight was not added until I think the radio show is where his actual flying.
But he's flying in this one. This episode is the mad scientist, and he leaps into the air and he keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's actually, is that the one where he's got the ray? He's firing the ray at him. He's like in the path of the energy ray. And he's like punching the ray.
Mm-hmm.
Probably.
I remember that. That's the scene they always show when they, because I know that scene and I haven't seen them much.
Because that's one where it's like like that's what I mean. Like they haven't committed. Like he seems to he jumps in and he's like punching at the ray, even though it's like one continuous stream of like energy ray. He's like punching it, and then eventually he gets overtaken by it and it sends him back to the ground, and then he has to jump back into it again. So he's like jumping against it, but there's still definitely like defying physics involved.
Right.
I mean, in the opening of those cartoons, they have the opening. He's jumping over like an Empire State Building type building and not flying it, but possibly like during the production of the cartoon, or they produced it over the course of a year. I don't know. Maybe they decide during the middle of the series that he can now just straightforward fly.
Yeah, we're tired of making him jump. Visually, it doesn't work.
But with George,
it's easier to animate too, because if he's always shown like this, all you need to do is move the background,
right,
for the sense of motion.
But with George, my first internship at Marvel. Go ahead, John.
That's how he flew in the TV show too, right? Like in 50s.
Yeah. Fist
I just
out.
thought of that. And did he fly like that? Serial? Because wasn't he in a serial?
I don't recall how he flew in the serials, because with the serials they put what year was the serials? That's the same.
I don't know.
Because
the 40s?
When he first, according to this thing I looked up, he first flew during the radio program in the 1940s. He didn't fly in the comics until issue 10 in 1941. But these all were going on almost around the same time.
Yeah.
So cartoons were also listed in the 1940s as well.
Here's a question. Did Captain Marvel fly before Superman did?
Is he flying there?
And he's throwing a car in this one. Did he actually fly in his first issue? Let's see.
Because that's from 1941 as well.
This is February 1940.
1940, so even earlier.
Let's see. Is he ever flying? With a mighty leap, Captain Marvel easily spawns the yawning chasm between the buildings. So he's not flying. Nope, he's always on the ground in his first issue. I don't know when he flew, but he was also not flying in his first issue. Interesting. Who was the first superhero to fly then? Submariner? Human Torch? They both
Maybe the
flew,
Human Torch.
right now.
Yeah. The first Submariner story is always under the ocean, so he doesn't fly.
Yeah.
But the Human Torch is in the same is also in Marvel Comics #1, and he flies.
Yeah, he flies. Yeah, it could have been. I don't know who else was flying around the place, but he was flying before Superman.
And the
How did the
Superman
Human Torch?
Serials was 48, so he was already flying in the comic books by then.
How was the Human Torch drawn when he flew?
On fire.
Was he arms in front of him or arms at his
Very
side? I don't
carefully.
remember.
Yeah,
I
I think he
think
was
his
arms on fire.
on the side.
Let me go find that Golden Age.
He's got to find it now. He's got some sort of Golden Age book back there. Do I have?
And was Namor flying in the first issues?
I don't know.
On
He
his
just said he
wings.
was underwater the whole first issue, so he wasn't flying. Was he drawn with the ankle wings right away?
That I don't know.
I don't either.
I don't think I have a facsimile of Marvel Comics #1.
I
No,
think
Wizard
I've got
put out
one.
one. Didn't Wizard put out?
Yeah,
Wizard magazine
Marvel
put
put
out a
out
facsimile?
one in the late 90s. I do have a
Yeah, I
facsimile
would've-
of Marvel Comics #1. I don't know where it is. It might be in my facsimile box. We'll see what Paolo comes back with. If he's got a, yeah. If he's got a
I think the Submariner one was also reprinted on that big 50th anniversary Marvel book.
It was reprinted in some Invaders issues. I remember that was the first time I ever saw those original Submariners ones, which were also done on duotone paper.
That's right, yeah.
Let's see. Ooh, look at that with his arms in front of him.
And what year is that?
1939.
So
Oh.
the Human Torch was flying before Superman.
So maybe they were trying to come up with their own distinct Superman flying thing.
So they could copyright it.
Yeah, could be.
Maybe.
Maybe that's why they didn't make him fly like the Human Torch, since you could copyright feats
Maybe.
of.
Yeah, but the judge only ruled that in 1951.
Yeah, that's true. They wouldn't have known that.
But
then.
he's flying in all sorts of ways here, because this is the introductory panel, the one that they had. It was
Right.
part of the story. The story starts here, and he's got his arms by his side.
Right.
Then
So they were doing different ways. That was just one way among a few. Oh yeah, he's got his arms.
See, I always pictured the Torch flying with arms on his side.
But here, he's got his arms in front of him. Even as he's going down, which when you're going down, you should want to decrease your velocity.
Yeah, maybe put your arms out to the side then. Looks like he's got a Superman pose in that last panel there. He's got like a couple of legs bent.
Oh, check this one out.
Yeah, a leg bent, arm bent one. That's sort of like Superman later on. Interesting.
Yeah. And that's it.
Oh, well, we should wrap it up. It's getting near our ending time. I'm gonna figure out where I read that article on flying. Maybe it was in. I've read so much comic book stuff over the years. I don't know where stuff comes from anymore.
Right.
All right. Well, everybody have a good night out there, and we will catch y'all next time.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.